Hello, Haunted Family. Welcome back. Story 1. Experiences. When I was in high school, we had a visiting presenter, and she could read auras. I've never seen an aura, even to this day. Anyway, she told me that I could speak to the dead, if I chose to, because my aura was white and almost clear. I, of course, asked her if I could just choose not to. Seeing spirits did not sound fun to me. And of course, I really wasn't taking any of this seriously. I was writing my friend a note when she interrupted me with this news. Years later, I thought about what she had said to me. My oldest son had just been born, and we were living in Washington State, in his dad's hometown. His father and I, without my prior consent, had rented a duplex. It was the other half of the building my son's father's brother had rented. I didn't like my son's room from the first day we moved in. It was painted this peach color, and it had 2 pretty good sized windows in it. But even with the lights on and the drapes open, that room stayed dark. I was always afraid of that room. We lived across the street from a cemetery. I'm really not sure if that had anything to do with this. I never shut my son's door. I was kind of afraid of SIDS at that point. I had him sleeping in my room until he was 6 months old. Awake every hour on the hour. He was now almost 9 months old. I started noticing that I would hear voices at night in the living room, like there was a party going on. I couldn't understand the words, just hear the voices. Several of them. Nothing too distinct. I'm a little hard of hearing, so not understanding words didn't shock me. That happens all the time. The problem was that no one but my youngest son and I were ever home when this happened. I'd hear footsteps in my living room, pacing back and forth. My son's dad had to be out of town for a few weeks, so I had my cousin and her boyfriend stay with me. One day, I decided to take a nap. My son had finally fallen asleep. I was in that stage between being asleep and being awake when I heard someone distinctly snoring on the floor of my bedroom. My son and I were again the only ones there. I rolled over and looked over the edge of the bed, and there was no one there. The snoring stopped. I rolled back to my side of the bed, and it started again. I rolled over, and again it stopped. I decided I was scaring myself, as I have a very active imagination. I heard it again, and this time I held my breath as I laid there, thinking that maybe it was just me. But no, I could still hear it quite clearly. I rolled over and it stopped again. I decided to get up and do the dishes instead of sleep. A week later, at this point, I'm sleeping with all the lights on in the house. I had finally fallen asleep. My son was sleeping in his crib as usual. I don't really know how long I'd been asleep, but the next thing I knew, my cousin and her boyfriend were both in the bed yelling, "Get up, get up, there's somebody in the baby's room." I jumped out of bed and I ran to my son's door. It was shut. I threw it open. I grabbed my son and came running back to my room. I was very angry at them for shutting the door, so I immediately started yelling at them. They knew better. And then I really looked at them. They were both white as sheets. Their eyes were huge. They both swore that his door was closed when they had got home. They said they'd been laying in the living room watching TV when they heard a rattling sound. They looked up, and they saw my son's door rattling, and the handle was shaking like someone was trying to get out but couldn't open the door. We moved out 2 weeks later. I did ask my son's aunt, who lived in the other half of the duplex, about the footsteps and the voices. Of course, I asked before any of this other stuff happened. She had been there for a few years before we moved in. She said that she had heard someone walking up and down her hallway a time or two. And she herself had heard voices from my side of the duplex when it was empty before we had moved in. She thinks an elderly lady had died in that house. I don't really know. I'm not going to wait around and find out. Whatever was in my son's room didn't feel nice. I always felt fear. And I'll never go back there. Story 2. Something happened. I was hanging out with a friend at her house. My boyfriend called and said that my grandma was feeling very sick, and that my dad and mom wanted me to spend the night there, in case anything happened. So I called my grandma, and she told me that she was going to bed, and that I didn't need to rush over. She told me that she'd leave the door unlocked, and I could drop by at any time. I got to her place at about 12 a.m., and I stayed awake until 1:30. And then I went to bed in the room across the hall from her. It helped me that I could hear her breathing, because I knew that she was okay. I woke up the next morning and my arm was numb. I had fallen asleep on it. I woke up and I started to shake it out. I opened my eyes and looked up. The blinds were almost shut, but I could still see out the last 2 inches. It was just getting bright outside. And then I got a weird feeling. I couldn't hear my grandma. Not that I couldn't hear her breathing in her sleep. I couldn't hear her up and about. I couldn't hear her at all. I was thinking that I should just roll over, look towards the door, the clock, see what time it was, get up and check on her. I was just about to roll over, and the cat jumped on the bed. I didn't see it. I was facing the window with the blankets up over my head. It jumped up just behind my knees. My grandma doesn't have a cat. I knew right away that it was Slippers. My grandma always likes to say, good old Slips. Slippers died about 15 years ago, but occasionally likes to make her presence known. She jumped up on the bed and walked up to my shoulder, laid down on my upper arm. I totally felt that, thinking, no way, this is not happening to me, not this morning. I reached up towards my shoulder to pet the ghost cat, and I could not move. I was totally paralyzed. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't wiggle my fingers. And there was this really loud, rushing noise in my ears. Like a cross between TV static and a furnace, times 100. I was not paralyzed with fear because up until now I wasn't scared. I thought maybe something had happened to my grandma in the night, and this was her way, someone's way of saying goodbye, or something. And then I totally forgot about the cat, and I thought, I really want to get up. I really have to check on my grandma. But the cat and the noise were still there, and I could not move. I totally understood how terrified people can be when sleep paralysis happens now. But I knew I was fully awake. I was trying to think if there was some rational explanation for why I couldn't move. I know it wasn't because I was scared. I just couldn't move. And then the noise went away, and the cat was suddenly gone, and in a blink of an eye, I could move again. I quickly curled up in a ball, and laid there for a few minutes, until I was sure whatever it had been was gone. I did not want to see a shadowy figure in the room or whatever. And then I jumped up and ran into the hallway. But this time, I heard the radio on, so I knew my grandma was up. When I was standing in the hallway, I realized I had no pants on. So I quickly turned around, flipped the light on, grabbed my pants, ran into the kitchen. As soon as I got into the kitchen, the phone rang. My grandma could tell something was bothering me, so she rushed my aunt off the phone. I told her everything, and she totally believed me. Then she started teasing me about how Slipper's gonna get me, over and over. At 9:30, I drove my grandma over to my aunt's house. I went in, and my aunt said that I looked like I'd been sick too. So I told her about Slippers and everything that had happened that morning. She told me about all the stories of how her cats that had passed away had come back to visit her. How sometimes she'll feel one of them jump in the bed and purr in her ear. I'm glad my family believes me and has been so supportive about this experience. Story 3. Haunted School. Me and a bunch of my friends were hanging out in the gym late after school to do some help with the upcoming dance. My friends slowly left one by one as their rides appeared. When I was left alone and said my goodbye to my last remaining friend, I left to go back to the gym to get some change to call home from a payphone to find out where my ride was. I couldn't find my backpack anywhere. I left the gym to see if I had brought it out front and maybe left it there. I noticed a trail of items from my bag leading to the chapel, which is in front of the school. When I opened the chapel door, I immediately noticed the same rotten egg smell that I always smelled when I visited this place for mass or school classes, but this time it was much stronger. Up by the podium, one lit red candle and a picture of a girl, probably from the 1960s. I was scared and I wanted to leave, but I found myself not able to move. The smell increased and I thought I was going to throw up, so I forced myself to run from the chapel. When I was outside, I heard a person crying, then a scream. I ran as fast as I could and went to the side parking lot of the building. When my ride, my brother, appeared, I realized that my bag was still in the chapel. I grabbed my brother and made him walk with me into the chapel. The smell was gone, but I swear it felt like it was 90 degrees in there. I grabbed my bag, and when I got home, I opened my bag to do my homework. I found nothing but that candle and that picture. Not knowing what to do, I called my same friends that were with me when we were decorating the gym. We gathered back at the school that night. I had the candle and the picture with me. We went into the chapel with holy water. The smell in there was so strong, and it was so hot. We felt like we were going to pass out from the heat. We sprinkled the holy water. We said some prayers. We left the candle and the picture there. And then we left. The next Monday, when school started, we all got there early. We entered the chapel. We found it to be ice cold, and it smelled like burning plastic this time. We found the candle. It was still there. The picture was now distorted. The face was deformed, and burnt on the back was 666. We've never gone back in there. To this day. Just being near the door when other groups of students enter, I can tell it's still hot, and it still smells bad. I don't know what is in there, but I don't like it. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to, leave me a comment down below. I love hearing from you. And until next time, bye! Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio.